the stillness before sleep. Thank you for joining us tonight as we explore the quiet wisdom of ancient Nicopolis, where one of history's greatest philosophers chose darkness over light in pursuit of perfect peace. Before we begin, take a moment to settle in. Turn down your screen brightness, and if you'd like, leave a comment below. Tell us where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love knowing we're sharing this journey together, scattered across different time zones, yet united in this search for stillness. Tonight, we walk alongside Epictetus, a man who understood something profound about the art of letting go. In the fading light of a Roman evening, nearly 2,000 years ago, he made a choice that would echo through the centuries. A deliberate act of breaking his own lamp to find deeper peace. The sun hangs low over Nicopolis, that ancient city on the western coast of Greece, where exiles and philosophers gathered to contemplate life's deepest questions. The year is perhaps 100 AD, and the air carries the salt tang of the nearby Ionian Sea, mixed with the earthy scent of olive groves and wild herbs that dot the hillsides. This is the hour when shadows grow long and the world begins its gentle surrender to night. The bustling sounds of the day, the merchants calling their wares, the clip-clop of donkeys on cobblestones, the laughter of children playing in the streets. All of this fades to a whisper as evening settles over the city like a soft woolen cloak. In this tranquil hour, we find ourselves drawn to a simple dwelling on the outskirts of the city. Here lives a man who has chosen the weight of wisdom over the burden of possessions, who has discovered that true freedom comes not from having more, but from needing less. Epictetus moves through his modest home with the careful, measured steps of one who has learned to find grace in limitation. His body bears the marks of a hard life, a leg damaged in slavery that gives him a slight limp, hands weathered by years of work and study. Yet there is something luminous about his presence, a quiet dignity that speaks of inner wealth beyond measure. The walls of his home are simple stone, whitewashed and clean. The floor is packed earth, swept smooth and scattered with dried herbs that release their fragrance when disturbed. A wooden table, rough-hewn but sturdy, holds his few precious possessions. A wax tablet for writing, a stylus worn smooth by countless thoughts, an earthen jug of water that beads with coolness in the warm evening air. And there, sitting quietly on a small shelf, is the clay lamp that will soon play such a curious role in our story. It's unremarkable, the kind of simple oil lamp that might be found in any Roman household. Yet tonight, this humble object will become the center of a profound act of philosophical intention. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. For now, the lamp sits patiently, filled with olive oil, its wick trimmed and ready. The evening light still filters through the single window, casting gentle patterns on the stone walls. There is no urgency here, no rushing toward some predetermined end. There is only this moment, this breath, this gradual letting go of the day's concerns. Perhaps you know this feeling, the way the world seems to slow as evening approaches, the way your shoulders might relax, your breathing deepen, as you allow yourself to step back from the endless demands of daily life. This is the hour when wise souls throughout history have chosen to pause, to reflect, to prepare for the restorative darkness of night. Epictetus understands this rhythm intimately. He has learned, through years of study and contemplation, that peace is not something we find, it is something we choose. And tonight, he will make a choice that demonstrates this truth in the most unexpected way. A walk among the olives. The philosopher steps outside his dwelling as twilight deepens, his worn sandals making soft sounds against the dusty path that leads toward the olive grove. The air has cooled with the setting sun, carrying on it the complex perfume of a Mediterranean evening. Wild thyme and rosemary, the distant smoke of cooking fires, and underneath it all, the rich earthy scent of olives ripening on ancient trees. These olive trees have stood here for generations, their trunks twisted and gnarled by decades of sun and wind, their silver-green leaves rustling with the slightest breeze. Some say the oldest among them were planted when Nicopolis was first founded by Augustus Caesar, making them witnesses to the rise and fall of emperors, the coming and going of countless human dramas. Epictetus walks slowly among these silent sentinels, his philosopher's mind finding in their patient endurance a mirror of Stoic wisdom. Here are beings that have learned to bend without breaking, to find nourishment in rocky soil, to offer their fruit freely season after season without complaint or expectation of reward. He pauses beside one particularly ancient tree, its trunk so broad that 3 men could not encircle it with outstretched arms. The bark is deeply furrowed, telling the story of countless seasons. Years of drought when the tree drew deep from hidden springs, years of plenty when its branches hung heavy with fruit, storms weathered and seasons of growth all recorded in the living wood. Running his weathered hand along the bark, Epictetus feels the rough texture against his palm, a sensation that grounds him in this moment, this place, this simple truth of being alive in a world of endless wonder. The tree asks nothing of him, expects nothing, judges nothing. It simply is, existing in perfect harmony with its nature, offering what it has to give. A gentle breeze stirs the leaves above, creating a sound like distant rain or whispered conversations. Some of the ripe olives have fallen to the ground, creating a carpet of purple and black beneath his feet. The philosopher bends carefully, his damaged leg making the movement deliberate, and picks up one of the fallen fruits. It's perfectly ripe, its skin taut and glossy, containing within it the essence that will become golden oil. The oil that lights lamps, nourishes bodies, anoints the sacred. Such a small thing, this olive, yet it contains multitudes. Like a human soul, he reflects, it must be pressed to yield its greatest gift. The grove extends in neat rows down the hillside, each tree spaced to allow for growth, for the spread of roots and branches. There is order here, but not the rigid order of human ambition. This is the order of nature, purposeful, patient, sustainable. The trees do not compete with one another for space or light. They simply grow according to their nature, and in doing so, create a harmony that speaks to something deep in the human heart. As he walks between the rows, Epictetus allows his mind to settle into the rhythm of his steps. This is walking meditation, though he would not use such a formal term. This is simply a man allowing himself to be present, to feel the earth beneath his feet, to breathe the cooling air, to let the day's thoughts and concerns dissolve into the larger peace of evening. The last light of the sun filters through the olive leaves, creating a dappled pattern of gold and shadow on the ground. Soon, this light will fade completely, and the grove will be bathed in starlight and the silver glow of the moon. But for now, there is this perfect balance between day and night, between the seen and the unseen, between holding on and letting go. In this balance, Epictetus finds a teaching that will guide his actions in the hours to come. For is this not the essence of wisdom? To know when to grasp and when to release, when to act and when to be still, when to seek illumination and when to embrace the darkness, the unlit lamp. Returning to his dwelling as the last light fades from the sky, Epictetus moves with the sure-footed confidence of one who knows his space intimately. Every stone in the floor, every beam in the ceiling, every corner and shadow is familiar to him. This is the gift of simplicity. When we own few things, we know each one deeply. His home tells the story of a life deliberately chosen. There are no unnecessary ornaments, no displays of wealth or status, no accumulation for its own sake. Yet there is beauty here, the beauty of function wedded to form, of objects chosen for their usefulness and their ability to serve without ostentation. The wooden table bears the marks of daily use, small stains from spilled wine, gentle gouges from the stylus when thoughts came too quickly for careful writing, the smooth wear patterns left by hands and arms resting during long hours of contemplation. This is furniture that has been truly lived with, not merely possessed. On a shelf carved into the stone wall sits a small collection of scrolls, the precious texts that have shaped his understanding. Aristotle and Plato, certainly, but also the works of his own teacher, Musonius Rufus, and the writings of earlier Stoics like Chrysippus and Cleanthes. These are his treasures, more valuable to him than gold or silver, for they contain the distilled wisdom of centuries. And there, sitting quietly in its designated place, is the clay lamp that will soon play such a pivotal role in our story. It's a simple thing, perhaps 6 inches long and 3 inches wide, shaped by unknown hands from the common clay of this region. The surface is unglazed, showing the natural color of fired earth, a warm brown that speaks of its humble origins. The lamp's design is purely functional. A rounded reservoir holds the olive oil, with a narrow spout extending from one end where the wick emerges. A small handle allows for easy carrying, though it's clear this lamp spends most of its time in one place, serving as a steady source of light for reading and writing. The wick has been trimmed recently, cut to just the right length to provide steady illumination without smoking. The oil reservoir is full, the golden liquid catching what little light remains from the window. Everything is ready. The lamp waits only for the touch of flame to begin its nightly service. But tonight will be different. Tonight, this humble servant will become the subject of a profound philosophical demonstration, a teaching that will illuminate more through its destruction than it ever could through its light. Epictetus looks at the lamp with the attention he might give to any teacher. For is this not what a philosopher does? Find instruction in the most ordinary things. Discover universal truths in particular objects. The lamp, in its patient readiness, speaks to him of duty fulfilled without complaint, of service offered without expectation of reward. How many evenings has this simple vessel provided light for his studies? How many times has its steady flame allowed him to capture fleeting thoughts on his wax tablet, to read the wisdom of ancient masters, to write letters to distant students seeking guidance? The lamp has been a faithful companion in his search for truth, never demanding attention for itself, never failing in its purpose. Yet tonight, Epictetus sees in this very faithfulness a kind of trap. For have we not all experienced the way our tools and possessions can become chains, binding us to patterns of thought and behavior that may no longer serve our highest good? The lamp provides light, yes, but what if that very light has become a distraction from a deeper illumination? The philosopher's weathered hands rest on the table beside the lamp, and for a moment he simply breathes. The air is still now, with evening fully settled over Nicopolis. From somewhere in the distance comes the soft sound of a flute, perhaps a shepherd playing for his own pleasure as he watches over his flock under the stars. This is the hour of transition, when the external world grows quiet and the inner world can speak more clearly. Soon he will light the lamp as he has done countless times before. But first, there are other preparations to make, other elements of his evening ritual that help create the conditions for wisdom to emerge. Reflections in the courtyard. The small courtyard behind his dwelling has become, over the years, Epictetus's favorite place for evening contemplation. It's a simple space, perhaps 20 feet square, paved with smooth stones that have been worn to a gentle sheen by weather and time. The walls on 3 sides provide privacy and shelter, while the 4th side opens to the olive grove and the star-filled sky beyond. In the center of the courtyard stands a modest fountain, not the elaborate marble creation one might find in a wealthy Roman's villa, but a simple stone basin fed by a narrow channel that carries spring water from the hills above. The water enters through a small opening, creating a gentle trickling sound that provides a constant, soothing background to thought and meditation. Tonight, the sound of the water seems especially clear in the still air. Each drop creates tiny ripples that catch the starlight, making the surface of the basin dance with reflected points of light. It's a reminder of the way small actions can create far-reaching effects, how a single thought, properly contemplated, can ripple outward to transform an entire life. Epictetus settles onto a simple stone bench beside the fountain, his damaged leg grateful for the rest. The stone is still warm from the day's sun, a gentle heat that soaks through his simple tunic and into his bones. This warmth, too, is a teacher, showing him how the earth stores the sun's energy and releases it slowly, generously, asking nothing in return. Around the edges of the courtyard, clay pots hold herbs and small flowering plants. Rosemary and thyme, lavender and mint, chosen not for their beauty alone, but for their practical uses. The rosemary for memory and clarity of thought, the lavender for its calming properties, the mint for tea that aids digestion after simple meals. As he sits in this peaceful space, the philosopher's mind naturally turns to the events of the day and the principles that have guided his responses to them. This is his practice, to review each day not with judgment or regret, but with the gentle curiosity of a student seeking to understand the lessons life has offered. Earlier today, a young man had come seeking guidance about a business venture that had failed, leaving him in debt and disgrace. The young man had wept, calling himself a failure, convinced that his life was ruined beyond repair. Epictetus had listened with the patience of one who has seen many such storms, knowing that wisdom often comes disguised as disaster. "Tell me," he had asked gently, "what did you lose that truly belonged to you?" The young man had listed his losses: money, reputation, the respect of his family, his plans for the future. To each item, Epictetus had posed the same question: was this ever truly yours to keep? Gradually, through patient questioning, he had helped the young man see that external things, wealth, reputation, others' opinions, are never fully under our control. We may influence them, work toward them, even temporarily possess them, but they are not ours in any permanent sense. The only thing that truly belongs to us is our response to what happens, our choice of how to think, feel, and act in any given moment. "Your business failed," Epictetus had said finally, "but you are not your business. Your reputation is damaged, but you are not your reputation. You have debt, but you are not your debt. What you are, your capacity for wisdom, for virtue, for growth, this remains untouched. This is where your true wealth lies." Now, sitting beside the gentle fountain as stars emerge in the darkening sky, Epictetus reflects on this encounter. Had his words helped? Had he found the right balance between compassion and clarity? These questions matter to him, for teaching is not merely an intellectual exercise, but a sacred responsibility. The water continues its soft music, and a night breeze stirs the herbs, releasing their fragrances into the cooling air. Somewhere in the olive grove, an owl calls, a sound that speaks of ancient wisdom and the patient watching that comes with true understanding. This is what he has learned in his years of study and teaching, that wisdom is not a destination, but a way of traveling. It's not something we achieve once and then possess forever, but something we must choose again and again, moment by moment, in the face of life's endless challenges and changes. The courtyard holds him in its peaceful embrace, and he feels again the profound gratitude that has become his default response to existence. To be alive in this moment, in this place. To have a mind capable of thought and a heart capable of compassion. To be part of the great conversation that connects all seekers of truth across time and space. What more could any soul desire? Thoughts on the tablet, rising from the stone bench with the careful movements of one who has learned to work with his body's limitations rather than against them, Epictetus makes his way back inside his dwelling. The transition from the open courtyard to the enclosed space feels like moving from one kind of peace to another. From the expansive calm of starlight and flowing water to the intimate quiet of familiar walls and cherished objects. The wax tablet waits on the wooden table where he left it earlier, its surface bearing the faint impressions of the day's thoughts and observations. This is his most treasured tool, more valuable to him than any lamp or cup or piece of furniture, for it is the repository of his inner life, the place where fleeting insights are captured and preserved. The tablet itself is a marvel of simple engineering. 2 wooden boards hinged together like a book, their inner surfaces covered with a thin layer of beeswax that can be written upon with a stylus and then smoothed clean for reuse. It's the ancient world's equivalent of a notebook, but somehow more intimate, more immediate than any modern writing instrument could ever be. He settles onto the wooden stool beside the table, his weathered hands reaching for the bronze stylus that has been his companion for so many years. The metal is warm from the day's heat, and its weight in his hand feels familiar, comfortable, like greeting an old friend who knows all his thoughts and judges none of them. By the last fading light from the window, he can just make out the words he wrote earlier. Reflections on the nature of freedom, notes for a letter to a former student, a brief meditation on the way morning light transforms the appearance of ordinary objects. The wax holds these thoughts gently, ready to release them when the surface is warmed and smoothed, ready to receive new insights when the old ones have served their purpose. This impermanence is part of what he loves about the wax tablet. Unlike words carved in stone or written on precious papyrus, these thoughts are held lightly, temporarily. They can be preserved if they prove valuable, or they can be erased without loss or regret. The medium itself teaches a lesson about the nature of attachment, how we can engage fully with our ideas and experiences while holding them with an open hand. Tonight, he feels drawn to capture some thoughts about the nature of illumination. both the literal light that comes from lamps and candles and the metaphorical light of understanding that comes from philosophical inquiry. The stylus moves smoothly across the wax, forming letters with the practiced ease of decades of writing. Light, he writes, reveals what is already there. It does not create the objects it illuminates, but simply makes visible what existed in darkness. So too with wisdom. It does not create truth, but reveals what was always present, waiting to be discovered. He pauses, the stylus resting against his lower lip as he considers this thought. Is this accurate? Or is there something more complex happening in both physical and metaphorical illumination? The flame of a lamp certainly reveals objects in a room, but it also creates shadows, areas of deeper darkness that exist only because of the light itself. Perhaps wisdom works similarly. Each insight we gain illuminates certain aspects of reality while potentially casting shadows elsewhere. The man who becomes wise about the nature of material possessions might lose some of his innocent enjoyment of simple pleasures. The philosopher who sees clearly the transient nature of human relationships might struggle with the full engagement that love requires. These are the kinds of questions that have occupied his mind for years. Not abstract puzzles to be solved once and forgotten, but living inquiries that deepen with experience and reflection. The stylus moves again, capturing these new thoughts in the patient wax. The wise person learns to see by many different lights, he writes, and also to see what can only be perceived in darkness. This last phrase surprises him. Where did it come from? Yet as he considers it, he feels its truth. There are indeed things that can only be perceived when the ordinary light is extinguished. The subtle movements of the soul, the quiet voice of conscience, the deep currents of being that run beneath the surface of conscious thought. Perhaps this is why he has been feeling drawn these past few days to experiment with darkness. Not the darkness of ignorance or despair, but the deliberate darkness of one who has learned to trust his inner sight. Tonight, he senses, will be the night for such an experiment. Preparing for rest. The simple bed that awaits Epictetus in the corner of his dwelling speaks volumes about his approach to life. Functional, modest, yet somehow dignified in its very simplicity. It consists of a wooden frame, expertly joined without nails or metal hardware, supporting a mattress stuffed with straw and wool from local sheep. Over this lies a single sheet of undyed linen, soft from many washings and folded at the foot of the bed, the woolen blanket that will provide warmth through the cool hours before dawn. This blanket holds a special place in his affections, not because of any monetary value, for it is clearly the work of local craftspeople rather than expensive artisans, but because of the care and intention woven into every thread. The wool comes from sheep that graze on the hillsides around Nicopolis, animals he has often observed during his walks, their fleeces growing thick and protective against the changing seasons. The blanket's color is the natural hue of undyed wool, a warm cream touched with hints of gray and brown, the colors of earth and stone and growing things. The weave is tight and even, speaking of hands that took pride in their work, that understood the importance of creating something that would provide comfort and service for years to come. Running his fingers across the blanket's surface, Epictetus appreciates its texture, neither rough nor smooth, but something in between that speaks to the skin of honest work and natural materials. This is wool that has been cleaned and combed and spun with care, then woven on a loom by someone who understood that a blanket is more than just a covering. It is a companion for the vulnerable hours of sleep, a guardian against the chill of night and the sometimes harsh dreams that visit in the small hours before dawn. He lifts the blanket and shakes it gently, watching as a few bits of lavender fall from its folds. Herbs he has placed there deliberately for their calming properties and their sweet scent. The fragrance rises in the still air, mixing with the other subtle perfumes of his simple dwelling. The olive oil in the lamp, the herbs drying in bundles near the window, the clean smell of whitewashed stone walls. Folding the blanket back carefully, he prepares his sleeping place with the same attention he brings to all his daily activities. This is not mere housekeeping, but a kind of meditation, a way of honoring the gift of rest and the miracle of consciousness that will soon surrender itself to the mystery of sleep. The pillow is a simple cloth bag filled with more of the local wool, soft enough to cradle his head, but firm enough to provide proper support for his neck and spine. Like everything else in his dwelling, it is perfectly suited to its purpose. Neither too soft nor too hard, neither too large nor too small, but exactly what is needed and nothing more. As he arranges these simple bedclothes, Epictetus reflects on the nature of comfort. How much do we really need to be comfortable? How many of our desires for luxury and elaboration are genuine requirements, and how many are simply habits of thought that we have never questioned? This bed will provide everything necessary for restorative sleep: warmth, softness, support, cleanliness. It will cradle his body through the night hours, allowing his muscles to relax and his mind to process the day's experiences. What more could any bed do, regardless of its cost or elaboration? There is freedom in this simplicity, the freedom that comes from knowing that happiness does not depend on external circumstances, that peace can be found in the most modest surroundings, that the soul's true needs are far simpler than the endless desires manufactured by an unexamined mind. The bed ready, he stands for a moment in the gathering darkness of his room, feeling a deep satisfaction that has nothing to do with pride or accomplishment. This is the satisfaction of alignment, of living in harmony with his deepest values, of choosing substance over appearance, function over fashion, wisdom over wealth. Soon he will lie down on this simple bed, pull the honest wool blanket over his shoulders, and surrender to sleep. But first, there are a few more elements of his evening ritual to complete, small actions that help create the inner conditions for peaceful rest and perhaps illuminating dreams. Water from the earthen jug. In the corner of his dwelling where the stone walls meet and the air stays coolest even on the warmest days, the earthen jug sits in patient service. It's a substantial vessel, perhaps 2 feet tall and broad enough that both hands are needed to lift it when full. The clay from which it was formed comes from the banks of the river that flows past Nicopolis, earth that has been shaped by countless seasons of flood and drought, earth that knows intimately the cycle of water and land, rain and sun. The jug's surface is unglazed, allowing the clay to breathe and the water within to stay naturally cool through the process of evaporation. Tiny beads of moisture form on its sides during the heat of the day, creating a gentle cooling effect that speaks to the ancient wisdom embedded in simple technologies. This is engineering without engineers, design without designers, the accumulated knowledge of generations of people who understood how to work with natural materials to meet human needs. Epictetus approaches the jug with the same mindful attention he brings to all his interactions with the objects in his dwelling. These are not mere things to him, but partners in the dance of daily life, each one offering its own form of service, its own quiet teaching about the nature of existence. He lifts the wooden cup that sits beside the jug, another simple object carved from olive wood by hands that understood the grain and character of the tree. The cup fits perfectly in his palm, its rim worn smooth by countless drinks of water, wine, and herbal teas. Like the blanket and the tablet and all his other possessions, it is exactly what it needs to be and nothing more. The water that flows from the jug into the cup is clear and cool, carrying within it the essence of the spring from which it came. Water that has traveled through limestone and clay, picking up minerals that give it a clean, slightly mineral taste that speaks of its journey through the earth. This is not water that has been processed and purified and stripped of character, but water that tells a story, of rain falling on distant mountains, of slow percolation through rock and soil, of emergence into sunlight at the sacred spring that has served the people of this region for countless generations. As he raises the cup to his lips, Epictetus pauses for a moment of gratitude. Here is one of life's most essential gifts, the water that makes up more than half of his body, the water without which no life can exist, the water that connects him to every living thing that has ever existed on this earth. The same water that flows through his body has flowed through the bodies of philosophers and emperors, slaves and free men, animals and plants beyond numbering. The first sip is always a small revelation. The way the cool liquid touches his tongue and throat, the immediate sense of refreshment and renewal it brings. Water asks nothing of him, no payment, no gratitude, no recognition of its service. It simply gives what it has to give, freely and completely, asking only to be received. He drinks slowly, savoring not just the physical sensation, but the deeper nourishment that comes from this simple act. In a world that often seems complicated beyond comprehension, here is something beautifully straightforward. Thirst and satisfaction, need and fulfillment, the basic transaction between a living being and the element that sustains all life. The cup emptied, he sets it carefully beside the jug and wipes his mouth with the back of his hand. Such a small thing, this drink of water, yet it has prepared him for the next phase of his evening ritual. His body is hydrated, his throat clear, his mind settled by this moment of simple, mindful attention to a basic need. In the growing darkness of his dwelling, he can hear the distant sound of the fountain in his courtyard, water calling to water, the eternal circulation that connects sky and earth, mountain and sea, the moisture in his breath to the vast oceans that cradle the world. Everything is connected, every drop part of the same endless cycle of transformation and renewal. This understanding fills him with a quiet joy that needs no external validation. To be part of this great circulation of elements, to be a temporary vessel through which water and air and food pass on their eternal journey. What a privilege, what a mystery, what a cause for wonder and gratitude. The flickering candle. From a small wooden box beside his writing table, Epictetus withdraws a single candle. Not the elaborate wax creation that might grace a wealthy Roman's dining room, but a simple tallow candle made from rendered fat and a twisted fiber wick. It's perhaps 6 inches long and no thicker than his thumb, humble in appearance but rich in potential. The candle represents hours of careful work by its maker. The collection of fat from slaughtered animals, the slow process of rendering it clean and pure, the preparation of wicks from plant fibers, the patient dipping and cooling that builds up the layers of tallow around the wick. Like so many of the objects in his dwelling, it embodies the quiet virtues of honest craftsmanship and practical wisdom. He places the candle in a simple bronze holder, another piece of functional beauty that speaks to the skill of local metalworkers. The bronze has developed a gentle patina over the years, a soft greenish tinge that speaks of age and use, and the slow interaction between metal and air. The holder's base is broad enough to catch any dripping wax, its socket sized to hold the candle securely without gripping so tightly as to crack the fragile tallow. From the banked coals in his small brazier, he lights a thin wooden splint, watching as the flame travels quickly up the dry wood. There's something magical about this moment. The way fire spreads from one fuel to another. The way light can be shared without diminishing its source. The splint burns with a small, bright flame that dances in the still air of the room. Touching the burning splint to the candle's wick, he watches as the flame takes hold, growing from a tiny blue flicker to a steady golden light. The wick, properly trimmed and prepared, burns evenly and without smoke, creating a small pool of molten tallow around its base. This is fire in its most domesticated form, not the wild flame of a forest fire or the roaring heat of a forge, but fire tamed and gentle, serving human needs with quiet efficiency. The light from the single candle transforms his dwelling in subtle but profound ways. Shadows that were invisible in the last daylight now spring into existence, creating depth and mystery in familiar corners. The stone walls seem to breathe with the flickering light, their whitewashed surfaces alternately bright and dim as the flame dances in imperceptible air currents. Objects take on new character in candlelight. The wooden table seems warmer, more alive, its grain more visible and inviting to the touch. The clay jug in the corner becomes a presence rather than just a utility, its curves and proportions revealed by the interplay of light and shadow. Even his simple bed seems transformed, more welcoming, more peaceful, bathed in the gentle glow. But it's not just the physical space that changes in candlelight, something in his own consciousness shifts as well. The harsh clarity of daylight, which reveals everything with equal intensity, gives way to a softer, more selective illumination. Some things emerge into prominence, while others recede into gentle obscurity. The eye learns to rest, to focus on what matters most, to find beauty in the partial revelation rather than demanding complete visibility. This is the light by which humans have lived for thousands of years. Fire captured and controlled, flame made servant rather than master. By this light, countless generations have cooked their food, warmed their homes, read their books, shared their stories. There's something primal and comforting about it, a connection to the long chain of human experience that stretches back to the first person who learned to kindle flame from spark. Epictetus settles into his chair and watches the candle burn, fascinated by the small drama playing out in the flame. The wick draws up the melted tallow, feeding it to the fire in a continuous cycle of consumption and renewal. The flame itself is a marvel, neither solid nor liquid nor gas, but something else entirely. A visible manifestation of transformation, matter becoming energy, substance becoming light and heat. In this simple flame, he sees a teaching about the nature of life itself. We too are like candles, drawing sustenance from our environment, transforming what we consume into light and warmth for others, burning steadily through the hours of our existence. And like candles, our light is most beautiful, not when it burns fiercely and briefly, but when it burns steadily and long, providing gentle illumination for whatever work needs to be done. The candle will burn for hours yet, long enough for evening prayers, for final reflections on the day, for the gradual preparation of mind and body for sleep. But it will not burn all night. That would be wasteful, and waste is foreign to Epictetus's philosophy. When the time comes for sleep, the candle will be extinguished, its service complete, its light preserved for another evening's needs. But first, there is one more element of his evening ritual to complete. One more way of honoring the transition from day to night, from activity to rest, from the external world to the interior landscape of dreams and restoration. Within stone walls, the walls that surround Epictetus in his simple dwelling are more than mere barriers against wind and weather. They are companions that have witnessed his transformation from former slave to respected teacher, silent guardians that have absorbed decades of his thoughts and prayers and quiet contemplations. Built from the local limestone that forms the backbone of this region, they speak of permanence and patience, of the slow accumulation of wisdom that comes from staying in one place long enough to truly know it. Each stone was chosen and placed by hands that understood their craft, masons who knew how to read the grain of rock, how to fit irregular pieces into a whole that would stand firm against time and weather. The stones vary in size and shape, but each one serves its purpose perfectly. Larger stones providing structural strength, smaller ones filling gaps and creating the smooth interior surface that has been finished with lime plaster and whitewash. The whitewash itself tells a story of renewal and care, applied fresh each year. It keeps the walls clean and bright while allowing them to breathe. The lime in the wash helps purify the air and discourage insects, while the white surface reflects what little light enters through the single window, making the most of every ray of sun or flicker of flame. These walls have heard everything: his morning prayers and evening reflections, his conversations with students and visitors, his occasional moments of doubt or discouragement, his more frequent expressions of gratitude and wonder. They have absorbed the sound of his stylus scratching across the wax tablet, the rustle of scrolls being unrolled and read, the gentle splash of water being poured from jug to cup. In the flickering candlelight, the walls seem almost alive, their surface subtly textured by the brushstrokes of countless applications of whitewash, marked here and there by the small scuffs and stains that accumulate in any lived-in space. Near the window, there's a slight discoloration where rain has occasionally blown in during winter storms. By the door, the wall shows the gentle wear of countless hands touching it for balance or support. But it's not just the physical presence of these walls that provides comfort. It's what they represent. In a world where so much is uncertain and changeable, where empires rise and fall, where personal fortunes can vanish overnight, these walls offer the gift of constancy. They have sheltered him through illness and health, through periods of intense teaching and times of quiet solitude, through the gradual deepening of his understanding and the slow acceptance of his own mortality. Within these walls, he has learned to be himself, not the self that others might expect or demand, but his truest self, the soul that exists beneath all the roles and identities that the world assigns. Here he is neither teacher nor student, neither former slave nor respected philosopher, but simply a human being engaged in the ancient work of understanding what it means to be alive. The thickness of the walls, perhaps 18 inches of solid stone, creates a sense of profound security. Outside, the world continues its restless activity. Merchants traveling late roads, ships navigating by starlight, soldiers keeping watch at distant outposts. But here, within these protective barriers, there is peace and quiet and the space for thoughts to settle like sediment in still water. The single window, positioned to catch the morning light, is fitted with wooden shutters that can be closed against storms or opened wide to welcome gentle breezes. Tonight, the shutters stand slightly ajar, allowing the cool night air to circulate while maintaining privacy and security. Through the gap, he can see a single bright star, perhaps Venus, the evening star that has guided travelers and lovers and philosophers since time immemorial. The walls also hold the heat of the day, releasing it slowly through the night hours. A natural form of climate control that keeps the interior comfortable without any need for fuel or flame. In winter, a small brazier can warm the space quickly, the stone walls absorbing and radiating the heat long after the coals have died down. This is architecture in harmony with its environment, using local materials, responding to local climate conditions, designed not to dominate the landscape, but to nestle into it naturally. The building will outlast its current occupant, sheltering future generations of seekers and thinkers, continuing its quiet service long after Epictetus has become a memory. In the gentle embrace of these walls, surrounded by the familiar objects that make up his simple life, the philosopher feels the deep contentment that comes from knowing oneself to be exactly where one belongs. This is home. Not because of any legal claim or financial investment, but because it is the place where his soul has learned to rest, where his mind has found the conditions it needs to flourish, where his heart has discovered the peace that comes from wanting nothing more than what one has. The broken lamp. The moment arrives with the quiet inevitability of sunrise or sunset, a decision that has been forming in the depths of Epictetus's consciousness for days, perhaps weeks, finally ready to manifest in action. He rises from his chair with deliberate slowness, his movements carrying the weight of intention rather than haste. The candle continues to burn steadily on the table, casting its gentle light across the familiar objects of his dwelling, unaware that it is about to become the sole source of illumination. The clay lamp sits exactly where it has always sat, filled with oil, wick trimmed, ready to serve. In the candlelight, it appears almost expectant, a faithful servant awaiting the call to duty that has come so many times before. But tonight will be different. Tonight, this humble object will participate in a teaching that transcends its simple function. Epictetus lifts the lamp carefully, feeling its weight in his hands. The substantial heft of fired clay, the liquid movement of oil within the reservoir, the slight roughness of the unglazed surface against his palms. For a moment, he simply holds it, honoring the service it has provided, acknowledging the countless evenings when its light has made possible his reading, his writing, his late-night contemplations. "You have been a good servant," he says quietly, his words addressed to the lamp as if it were a living companion. "You have given light freely, without complaint, without expectation of reward. You have asked only for oil and care, and in return you have illuminated the darkness whenever called upon." The lamp, of course, makes no reply, yet in the philosopher's mind there is a sense of communication, of understanding passing between the conscious being and the crafted object. This is not mere sentimentality, but a recognition of the interconnectedness of all things, the way human intention and natural materials and skilled craftsmanship come together to create objects that serve and bless and teach. "But tonight," he continues, his voice still soft but carrying a note of firm resolve, "you will teach a different lesson, not through your light, but through your breaking, not through your service, but through your sacrifice." He moves to the center of the room, where the stone floor is clear of furniture or belongings. The candle flame flickers slightly as he passes, creating dancing shadows on the walls. Outside, the night is deep and still, the perfect backdrop for what is about to unfold. What drives this action? It is not anger or frustration or any negative emotion. Rather, it springs from a profound understanding of the nature of attachment and the subtle ways that even beneficial dependencies can become chains that bind the soul. The lamp has served well, perhaps too well. Its reliable presence has created an expectation, a routine, a small but persistent link in the chain of desires that keep the mind from perfect freedom. For weeks, Epictetus has been contemplating the nature of illumination, both the physical light that reveals objects in darkness and the inner light of wisdom that reveals truth in confusion. He has begun to suspect that his reliance on external light, however modest, however practical, might be preventing him from developing a deeper trust in his inner vision. The Stoic path is one of progressive liberation from all forms of dependency that are not absolutely necessary. Food, yes, the body must be nourished. Shelter, yes, protection from the elements is required. But artificial light, is this truly necessary, or has it become a habit that masquerades as a need? Standing in the center of his dwelling, lamp in hand, Epictetus feels the weight of the decision before him. This is not a casual act, not a moment of impulse or drama. This is philosophy made manifest, theory transformed into practice, understanding expressed through deliberate action. He raises the lamp slightly, feeling again its familiar weight, seeing how the candlelight plays across its simple surface. Then, with a movement that is both gentle and decisive, he releases his grip. The lamp falls perhaps 3 feet to the stone floor, not a great distance, but more than enough for fired clay. It strikes the stones with a sound that is both sharp and muffled. The crack of breaking pottery followed immediately by the splash of spilling oil. The sound echoes briefly in the enclosed space and then fades, leaving behind a silence that seems deeper than before. The lamp lies broken into several pieces, not shattered beyond recognition, but clearly and irreparably damaged. The oil spreads slowly across the stone, its surface catching the candlelight like a small dark mirror. The wick, no longer held in place, lies among the fragments like a casualty of war. For a long moment, Epictetus simply stands and observes what he has done. There is no regret in his heart, no sense of loss or waste. Instead, there is a curious feeling of lightness, as if some invisible burden has been lifted from his shoulders. The deed is done, the choice made, the small dependency severed. It is finished, he says quietly, and in those words is both completion and beginning, the end of one way of living and the start of another. From this night forward, when darkness comes, he will meet it without the mediation of artificial light. He will learn to trust his other senses, his inner vision, his capacity to navigate by touch and sound and intuition. The broken lamp cannot be repaired. The crack runs too deep, the damage too complete. Tomorrow he will gather the fragments and return them to the earth from which they came, completing the cycle of clay to vessel to fragments to soil. The oil will be cleaned away, though its scent may linger for days as a reminder of this night's teaching. But for now, the lamp lies broken. Its service ended, its final lesson delivered, and in its breaking, it has illuminated something that no amount of burning could ever have revealed. The difference between true necessity and comfortable habit, between genuine need and subtle attachment, between the light that reveals the external world and the light that reveals the landscape of the soul. Act. Stargazing, with the lamp's light extinguished forever and only the single candle remaining, Epictetus moves toward the window where the wooden shutters stand slightly ajar. The broken pottery lies behind him on the stone floor. A completed action that has already begun to fade into memory, making space for what comes next. His damaged leg moves carefully across the oil-slicked stones, but his balance is sure, his purpose clear. He pushes the shutters fully open, and the night rushes in. Not as darkness, but as a different kind of illumination altogether. The absence of artificial light allows his eyes to adjust gradually to the subtler radiance of stars and moon, and what initially seemed like impenetrable blackness slowly reveals itself to be rich with gradations of shadow and silver, depth and distance. The window frames a portion of sky that takes his breath away, not because it is unfamiliar, for he has looked upon these same stars countless times, but because tonight he sees them with new eyes, eyes freed from the competition of lamplight, eyes learning to trust their capacity to find meaning in darkness. Above the olive grove, the constellation of Orion stands guard in the southern sky, his belt of 3 bright stars as clear and steady as beacons. The Greeks call him the Hunter, and tonight Epictetus feels the appropriateness of that name. For is he not hunting as well? Not for prey in the physical world, but for understanding in the vast wilderness of existence. To the east, the Pleiades cluster like scattered jewels against the dark fabric of night. 7 sisters, the myths say, though his aging eyes can make out only 6 distinct points of light. These stars have guided sailors across trackless seas, helped farmers know when to plant and harvest, inspired poets and philosophers to contemplate humanity's place in the cosmic order. Each star is a sun, he knows, perhaps larger and brighter than the sun that warms the earth by day, but made small by unimaginable distance. Some of the light reaching his eyes tonight began its journey years ago, traveling across the void at speeds his mind can barely comprehend. He is seeing not just the stars as they are, but as they were, receiving messages sent from the deep past by fires that may have already died. This thought fills him with a profound sense of connection to the vast scales of space and time. His own life, measured against the age of stars, is briefer than the flicker of a candle flame. His concerns, his teachings, his small daily dramas, all of it plays out against a backdrop so immense that it renders human importance both infinitesimal and, paradoxically, infinitely precious. For if the universe is vast beyond comprehension, if the stars burn for millions of years in their cosmic dance, if galaxies wheel through space in cycles too long for human minds to grasp, then what a miracle it is that consciousness exists at all. What an extraordinary gift that matter has organized itself into forms capable of awareness, of wonder, of the capacity to look up at the night sky and feel both humility and exaltation. The Milky Way stretches across the zenith like a river of light, countless stars too distant and dim to be seen individually, but collectively creating a luminous band that seems to flow from horizon to horizon. The Romans call it the path of souls, believing it to be the road by which the spirits of the dead travel to their eternal rest. Tonight, gazing up at its ethereal beauty, Epictetus finds that mythology more compelling than any rational explanation. A meteor streaks across the sky, a brief line of light that appears and vanishes in the space of a heartbeat. The Greeks call these falling stars, though he knows they are not stars at all, but small pieces of celestial debris burning up in the upper atmosphere. Yet knowledge does not diminish wonder. If anything, understanding the true nature of meteors makes their brief beauty even more poignant. Standing at his window, breathing the cool night air, surrounded by the vast cathedral of stars, Epictetus feels his consciousness expanding to match the scale of what he observes. The broken lamp behind him, the simple objects of his dwelling, even his own body. All of these seem suddenly small and temporary, like waves on the surface of an ocean too deep to fathom. Yet this diminishment does not bring despair, but liberation. If he is small in the cosmic scale, then his mistakes are small as well. If his life is brief, then each moment becomes precious beyond measure. If the stars will continue burning long after his name is forgotten, then he is free to live authentically, without the burden of trying to achieve some impossible permanence. The night wind stirs the olive trees beyond his window, creating a soft susurrus that blends with the distant sound of the fountain in his courtyard. These earthly sounds ground him, reminding him that he is not just a consciousness floating in cosmic space, but an embodied being, rooted in a particular place and time, with particular responsibilities and opportunities. This is the gift of darkness, not the absence of light, but the presence of a different kind of illumination. In the gentle radiance of starlight, freed from the harsh specificity of artificial illumination, his mind finds a peace that daylight cannot provide. Here, in this marriage of inner contemplation and outer vastness, wisdom has space to grow. Moonlit peace. As if summoned by his need for even deeper tranquility, the moon begins to rise above the eastern hills, its silver light gradually transforming the landscape visible through his window. What was mysterious and shadowed in starlight alone now takes on new definition, the olive trees becoming individual presences rather than a dark mass, the stone walls of his courtyard emerging from obscurity like old friends returning from a journey. This is not the harsh, revealing light of midday sun, nor even the warm, flickering illumination of candle or lamp. Moonlight is something altogether different, gentle, contemplative, somehow more forgiving than other forms of illumination. It reveals enough to navigate safely, but leaves room for mystery, for the imagination to fill in details, for the mind to rest in partial knowledge rather than demanding complete clarity. Epictetus leaves the window and moves slowly toward the door that leads to his courtyard. Stepping carefully around the fragments of the broken lamp, the oil has spread into a thin film across the stone floor, and in the moonlight streaming through the window, it creates an abstract pattern of light and reflection, that has its own austere beauty. Even in destruction, he reflects, there can be unexpected grace. The wooden door opens with a soft creak, not the protest of neglected hinges, but the gentle voice of wood that has expanded and contracted through countless cycles of heat and cold, wet and dry. He steps across the threshold into his courtyard, and the night embraces him like a familiar companion. The space is transformed by moonlight, the stone pavement gleaming softly, the fountain creating a constant play of light and shadow as the water catches and releases the silver radiance. The herbs in their clay pots seem more fragrant in the cool air, releasing their essences generously into the night. Rosemary and thyme, lavender and mint, creating an invisible garden of scent that complements the visible beauty around him. The fountain's music seems clearer now, more distinct, each drop creating its own small note in the ongoing composition of falling water. The sound has layers, the initial splash as water enters the basin, the gentle gurgling as it circulates, the almost inaudible whisper as some of it evaporates back into the air. This is nature's own symphony, played on instruments of stone and water, conducted by gravity and the patient circulation that connects all things. Above the courtyard, the moon sails through wisps of high cloud, occasionally dimming and brightening as the thin veils pass across its face. These clouds are so high and delicate that they seem more like thoughts than physical objects. Ephemeral, constantly changing, beautiful in their impermanence. Epictetus settles onto his stone bench beside the fountain, his body grateful for the support, his mind ready for this deeper phase of evening contemplation. The stone is cool now, having released the day's accumulated warmth to the night air. The contrast with his body heat creates a pleasant sensation, not uncomfortable, but alerting, helping to keep him present and aware. From this vantage point, he can see through the open doorway into his dwelling, where the single candle continues to burn on the wooden table. The warm golden light seems almost foreign now, after his eyes have adjusted to the subtler illumination of moon and stars. It serves as a reminder of the choice he has made, to trust darkness, to embrace the unknown, to find his way by inner light rather than external flame. The moonlight reveals details in his courtyard that daylight renders invisible through its very abundance. The texture of the stone pavement, worn smooth by weather and footsteps. The way water has stained the rim of the fountain with mineral deposits that create abstract patterns like ancient script. The shadows cast by the potted herbs, creating a geometry of light and dark that shifts subtly as the moon moves across the sky. This is contemplation made manifest in stone and water, in the patient circulation of elements, in the marriage of human intention and natural process. The courtyard is not wilderness, but neither is it completely domesticated. It represents a middle way. Nature welcomed and gently guided, but not dominated or controlled. A nightbird calls from somewhere in the olive grove, not the harsh cry of a predator, but something melodious and questioning, as if the creature too is contemplating the mystery of existence under the stars. The sound carries clearly in the still air, a reminder that he is not alone in his nocturnal wakefulness, that other beings also find meaning in the quiet hours between sunset and dawn. The peace that settles over him now is different from any he has known. Not the peace of completion or satisfaction, but the peace of surrender, of alignment with forces larger than individual will or desire. This is what the broken lamp has made possible. Not just the absence of artificial light, but the presence of a deeper trust in the natural rhythms that govern all existence. And drifting to sleep, the time has come for the final surrender of the day. The gentle transition from waking consciousness to the mysterious realm of sleep and dreams. Epictetus rises from the stone bench with the slow, deliberate movements of one who has learned to honor his body's signals, to work with rather than against the natural processes of aging and fatigue. The moon has climbed higher now, its light flooding the courtyard with silver radiance that makes the night feel less like an absence and more like a presence. A different kind of day, governed by different rhythms, offering different gifts to those who learn to receive them. He takes one last look around his peaceful sanctuary, the fountain continuing its patient music, the herbs releasing their fragrances into the cool air, the stone walls standing guard against the larger darkness beyond. Moving back through the doorway into his dwelling, he is struck again by the contrast between the warm golden light of the single candle and the cool silver illumination of the moon. Both have their place, their purpose, their unique contribution to human comfort and understanding. But tonight, the candle's service is nearly ended. He approaches the table where the candle burns, its flame steady and bright, its pool of melted wax spreading slowly around the base. The light has served him well during these evening hours, allowing him to see the broken lamp clearly, to navigate safely around the spilled oil, to perform the small tasks necessary for preparing for sleep. But now, like the lamp before it, its time has come to an end. With a gentle breath, he extinguishes the flame, not with violence or haste, but with the same deliberate intention that has characterized all his actions this evening. The light disappears instantly, leaving behind only a thin wisp of smoke that carries the scent of burned wick and cooling wax. The darkness that follows is complete. No lamp, no candle, no artificial illumination of any kind. Yet it is not the darkness of fear or confusion. His eyes, already adjusted to the subtler light of moon and stars, find their way easily to his simple bed. The whitewashed walls reflect what little light enters through the window, creating a gentle luminosity that makes navigation possible without strain or uncertainty. The broken lamp lies where it fell, its fragments catching occasional glints of moonlight, a reminder of the evening's central teaching about the difference between attachment and freedom, between comfortable habit and conscious choice. Tomorrow, he will gather those pieces and return them to the earth, completing the cycle. But tonight, they serve as silent witnesses to the power of deliberate action in service of philosophical understanding. He removes his simple tunic and folds it carefully, placing it on the wooden stool beside his bed. The night air touches his skin with gentle coolness, not cold enough to be uncomfortable, but fresh and invigorating, helping to prepare his body for the deep rest that awaits. This, too, is part of his evening ritual, the gradual shedding of the day's concerns along with its garments. The linen sheet welcomes him with its familiar texture, soft from many washings, but still strong and serviceable. As he settles onto the straw and wool mattress, he feels his body beginning the ancient process of surrender. Muscles relaxing, breathing deepening, the constant vigilance of waking consciousness gradually giving way to trust in the natural processes of rest and renewal. The woolen blanket, when he draws it over his shoulders, carries with it all the comfort of honest craftsmanship and natural materials. The wool still holds faint traces of the hillsides where the sheep grazed, the hands that sheared and cleaned and spun and wove it into this protective covering. Wrapped in its warmth, he feels connected not just to his immediate comfort, but to the long chain of human skill and care that makes such comfort possible. Through the open window, the sounds of night continue their gentle symphony. The whisper of wind through olive leaves, the distant call of a nightbird, the soft splash of the fountain in his courtyard. These sounds do not disturb his growing drowsiness, but rather enhance it, creating a natural lullaby that speaks of the world continuing its ancient rhythms while he rests. His mind, freed from the demands of lamplight and the tasks it makes possible, begins to drift in the spacious darkness. Thoughts arise and dissolve like clouds across the moon, reflections on the day's teachings, gratitude for simple pleasures, awareness of the breath moving in and out of his lungs, carrying life to every cell of his body. The broken lamp, the patient olive trees, the cool water from the earthen jug, the faithful service of simple objects, the vast cathedral of stars. All of these images flow through his consciousness like water through the fountain, each one offering its own quiet teaching about the nature of existence and the possibilities for wisdom and peace. This is how sleep should come, not as an escape from life, but as a deeper entry into its mystery. Not as unconsciousness, but as a different kind of awareness, not as emptiness, but as fullness of a different sort. In the darkness behind his closed eyelids, new forms of illumination become possible. The light of dreams, of intuition, of the soul's own deep knowing. The olive grove beyond his window continues its patient existence. Trees that have learned to draw sustenance from rocky soil, to bend without breaking in strong winds, to offer their fruit freely season after season. In their quiet persistence, he finds a model for his own approach to life. Steady, generous, rooted in something deeper than the changing circumstances of any particular day or season. The fountain continues its music, water flowing in endless circulation from source to basin to earth and back again. A reminder of the great cycles that govern all existence, the way all things arise and pass away and arise again in new forms. The eternal dance of transformation that includes his own life as one small but significant movement. And gradually, gently, with the trust that comes from years of philosophical practice and the peace that follows from conscious choice, Epictetus allows himself to drift towards sleep, not fighting the transition, not grasping after the day's experiences, but surrendering to the natural rhythm that carries all beings from waking to waking again, from activity to rest to renewed activity, from one day's teachings to the next day's opportunities for growth and service. Add final reflections and gentle fade. In these final moments before sleep claims him completely, Epictetus rests in the profound stillness that follows conscious choice, the peace that comes not from having everything we want, but from wanting nothing more than what we have. The broken lamp lies in darkness on the stone floor, its service ended, its final lesson delivered. In choosing to break it, he has broken something in himself as well, not something valuable, but something that was limiting his growth, constraining his freedom, keeping him attached to patterns that no longer served his highest good. This is the deepest teaching of the Stoic path, that we are most free when we need least, most powerful when we control least, most illuminated when we depend least on external sources of light. The lamp served well, but in the end it was still a dependency, still a small chain binding him to the assumption that darkness must be banished rather than embraced, that night must be conquered rather than welcomed as a teacher in its own right. Now, lying in his simple bed, wrapped in honest wool, breathing the cool night air that flows through his window, he experiences a freedom that no external circumstance could ever provide or take away. This is the freedom of the soul that has learned to find its home in whatever conditions arise. Darkness or light, comfort or discomfort, praise or blame, success or failure. All of these are simply weather patterns in the vast sky of consciousness, temporary conditions that arise and pass away, leaving the essential self untouched and undiminished. The moonlight continues to paint silver patterns on his walls, and through the window he can see the stars maintaining their eternal vigil, those distant suns that have burned since before human consciousness existed, that will continue burning long after the last human voice falls silent. In their patient radiance, he finds not a diminishment of human significance, but a proper perspective on it. We are small in the cosmic scale, yes, but we are also miraculous, conscious participants in the universe's long journey toward greater complexity, greater beauty, greater awareness. His breathing deepens and slows, following the natural rhythm that prepares the body for sleep's restoration. Each exhale releases a little more of the day's accumulated tension, the slight strain of teaching young minds, the physical discomfort of his damaged leg, the subtle effort required to maintain patience and kindness in the face of human folly and confusion. Each inhale draws in not just air, but peace, the peace of alignment with natural law, of acceptance of what cannot be changed, of focus on what lies within his control. The olive trees beyond his window continue their silent testimony to the virtues of patience and persistence, drawing nourishment from rocky soil, growing slowly but steadily, offering their fruit freely to any who would receive it. In their quiet example, he has learned much about how to live, how to bend without breaking, how to find sustenance in unlikely places, how to give without expectation of return. The fountain's gentle music weaves through his growing drowsiness like a thread of silver through dark cloth, water finding its way from source to destination, following the path of least resistance but never failing to reach its goal. This, too, is a teaching about how to live, how to flow around obstacles rather than fighting them, how to persist without force, how to accomplish great things through small, consistent actions repeated over time. As sleep draws nearer, the boundaries between self and world begin to soften. His breath mingles with the night air. His body heat exchanges with the coolness of stone and wool. His consciousness expands to include the fountain's music, the moon's light, the patient presence of the olive trees. This is not a loss of identity, but a discovery of a larger identity. the self that is continuous with the natural world, part of the great web of existence that connects all things in patterns too complex and beautiful for the waking mind to fully comprehend. The broken lamp has completed its teaching, not just about the nature of attachment and freedom, but about the courage required to let go of familiar comforts in service of deeper growth. It takes wisdom to know when something that has served us well has become a limitation, when a helpful tool has become a crutch, when a source of security has become a barrier to greater trust and understanding. In the growing softness of approaching sleep, he offers gratitude for the day's experiences, both pleasant and challenging, for the simple objects that have served him faithfully, for the natural world that provides endless teachings about how to live with grace and dignity. Gratitude for his students, who challenge him to articulate his understanding more clearly, for his few possessions, which meet his needs without enslaving his desires, for his body, which despite its limitations continues to carry him through each day's journey. Most of all, gratitude for the capacity to choose his responses to circumstances, to choose his thoughts and attitudes, to choose what to value and what to release, to choose how to meet each moment with presence and wisdom rather than mere reaction. This capacity for choice is the greatest gift of human consciousness, the ability to participate consciously in our own growth, to shape our character through countless small decisions, to become the authors of our own inner freedom, regardless of external conditions. The night deepens around him, and sleep approaches like a gentle tide, carrying him toward the mysterious realm of dreams and restoration. In a few hours, dawn will break over Nicopolis, painting the olive groves with golden light, awakening the birds to their morning songs, calling the world back to the activities of day. But that is tomorrow's gift. Tonight belongs to rest, to the deep healing that comes when consciousness releases its grip on the day's concerns and trusts the natural processes of renewal and regeneration. And so, in the perfect darkness of his lampless dwelling, surrounded by the gentle sounds of night and the patient presence of simple objects that ask nothing more than to serve faithfully, Epictetus drifts into sleep, carrying with him the peace that comes from conscious choice, the freedom that follows from willing surrender, and the deep contentment that belongs to those who have learned to find their home not in external circumstances, but in the unchanging center of their own being. The broken lamp lies in darkness on the stone floor, no longer a source of light, but somehow more illuminating in its brokenness than it ever was in its wholeness. A silent teacher offering its final lesson about the difference between the light that reveals the external world and the light that illuminates the landscape of the soul. In choosing darkness, the philosopher has found a deeper illumination. The light that needs no fuel, casts no shadows, and burns with the steady radiance of wisdom itself. Sleep well, seeker of truth. Rest deeply in the knowledge that some of life's greatest teachings come not through addition, but through subtraction, not through grasping, but through letting go, not through filling the darkness with artificial light, but through learning to see with the eyes of the heart, which need no lamp to find their way home. The night embraces all. Philosopher and olive tree, broken lamp and flowing fountain, the seeker and the sought, the question and the answer, all held in the vast, gentle darkness that is not the absence of light, but the presence of peace, infinite, eternal, and available to any soul brave enough to choose it. Long, gentle fade to silence.